A total of 95 walk-in centres. 40% of the overall original number have closed since the Conservatives came to power, or are due to shut soon. This is a campaigning organisation called 38 Degrees, which I've not heard of before. Critics claim the loss of the centres has piled greater pressure on hospitals, many of which are suffering in the face of the NHS winter crisis, of which there is always one. But isn't it a shame to lose those walk-in centres? 0345 6060 973. Simple task between now and 10. Solve the NHS crisis. And if you just say more money, you have to be missing the point, right? Dr. Lawrence Buckman is with us, a North London GP and a former chair of the BMA GP Committee. Dr. Bob Gill, GP and producer of the great NHS Heist, is with us as well. So I have two doctors on a Sunday morning. This is a rare and wonderful thing. I feel that I ought to have something wrong with me, just so I could ask you your advice. Brilliant to have you on board. Dr. Buckman, if we could start with you first. Is our NHS in crisis? That's a simple one.
It's been in crisis for a long time. I wouldn't use the word crisis now because it's sort of almost terminal. And I think the latest little ups and downs of A&E are just an example of what was inevitable. For the last 20 years, this has been coming as the workforce has shrunk and the amount of money spent on it has rocketed because you need more and more, the more things you can do to people. And I think we're now seeing the chickens coming home to roost, as most of us have predicted would happen. Yeah,
it's a depressing outlook for you then. Would you concur with that, Dr. Bob Gill?
The crisis has been brewing for years, but I disagree strongly with Lawrence Buckman trying to blame medical technology and demand. This is not where the problem arises. The problem arises from government policy, which is designed to switch us from a universal health system funded by the taxpayer, which is the most cost-effective way of delivering healthcare, into an insurance-based system. And they've gradually been setting the NHS up to collapse. As a proportion of national income, GDP, we're spending less on our healthcare than we were a few years ago, less than all equivalent developed countries. So the misdirection that we need more money is bogus. The idea is to create an impression within the public that this is not sustainable, we can't afford it, this, that and the other. They are all part of setting us up for a disastrous transition to an insurance-based system.
Dr. Gill, what evidence do you have for that assertion that we are being set up for an insurance-based system? Tons of people, I don't have the numbers in front of me, already have insurance because they're not about to rely on the NHS, because they're not about to wait, for instance, 6 months, 8 months, 18 months for a scan. If you need a scan, then it's going to cost you 200 or 300 quid. You'll go and have one, won't you? If you have the money.
Well, let me explain to you. About 10% of the population have private insurance.
Right.
The vast majority of those are through their employer. So they don't pay for it themselves, they get it with their job. That's the vast majority. Mm-hmm. As you rightly say, as waiting lists go up, more people are choosing to pay one-off and get scans and appointments done, paying out of their pocket.
Sure.
Now, the biggest evidence we have that we're going to an insurance-based system is the legislation. The Health and Social Care Act 2012 set up the structures. They broke down the funding of the NHS into insurance pools, which are called clinical commissioning groups. These are, at the moment, publicly run insurance pools, and they are already set up to transition into the hands of a company called Optum, which is a subsidiary of the global conglomerate United Health. And we have United Health former President of Global Expansion, Simon Stevens, in charge of the NHS. How much evidence do you want?
OK, Dr. Buckman, your views on what Dr. Gill has just said.
I don't know where he gets the idea. I don't agree with him. Almost everything he said, I think, is pretty much on the button. I didn't blame medical technology. I just said that that's the reason why people live longer and therefore cost more money. But the rest of his analysis is broadly right. I think we are seeing a system that has been geared under more than one government to move to an insurance-based model with which I think many patients would not hold as a generality. I appreciate the idea that you know, if you want to have a top-up insurance for things you want at a different rate, that's your choice. But I think that to get up a system that's going to run like that, I think is very disturbing. And I think people have been deluded into thinking that the NHS was safe in any politician's hands. And I think that is where the problem begins. you ask for a solution that doesn't include money, and I certainly think that the first thing we should do is wrest control of the NHS away from politicians generally and make it not so much an independent service, but a publicly owned service that is run for and by the public.
Yeah, well, we're looking for efficiency and a good way to run things like any organisation, especially one as enormous as this, Dr. Gill. Efficiency in the NHS, it doesn't really tally, does it?
Well, it does. It used to.
It doesn't.
Under the Beveridge system, which was what was formed in 1948. We had the lowest administrative cost of any health care.
Well, yeah, but that's 1948. I mean, come on. It's 2018 now. I almost said 17.
No, but what I'm trying to explain to you is the governments keep talking about efficiency, but every year they make the NHS less efficient by introducing market bureaucracy. The costs of administration have gone from less than 5% to something close to 20%, and the model we're working to, the administrative costs are 30%. That's the US model.
Yeah.
So every time a politician utters the word efficiency, you have to...
Okay, but hold on a second. Dr. Gill, before you can scatter around all these numbers, and I do my best to keep up with you, and I bow to your superior knowledge, no doubt. But, for instance, when I tried to get my mother-in-law out in the middle of December out of Royal Surrey, and they said, and we had to coordinate, and you'll understand this, from a hospital bed to a nursing home. She couldn't lift her head because she became unconscious, been there for ages. They could do no more for her. At 8 o'clock in the morning, they said, be there in 5 minutes. The transportation going to get you out. It was an ambulance transfer. At 9 o'clock, 8 o'clock is not going to happen. 9 o'clock. Then they said 10 o'clock. 10 o'clock turned into midday, then 1, then 4, then 6, then 8. And eventually at 8:30, we got her out of there. That is one example. One weekend, they didn't give her medicine at all and apologised, and it almost killed her. That is inefficient.
Okay, and did you inquire who was the transport company taking your mother home? Was it one of these privatised outsourced companies like Arriva?
Yeah. So
was it one of those? So
we've been a little bit busy. The investigation into her lack of medicine being supplied over the weekend is something that we will pursue when we've recovered from her passing. And the transport services, I have no idea. But we're going to
look into it.
But you're absolutely right. Are they likely to be a private company, Dr. Gill?
They are likely to be a private company. The point is, the system that I am trying to defend has been wrecked. It is failing left, right, and centre. I am not for 1 minute saying it's perfect. Some of my patients have died as a direct result of lack of capacity within the hospitals. This is why I'm fighting. I've got no personal gain out of spending my Sunday talking to you. My patients are dying. My patients are suffering. What I'm trying to get through to you is this is the price that the government are paying. They're killing off people to justify by eroding the confidence, as your confidence has been eroded, that we need to switch to something different. The critical mass is rising for the public to lose faith with the NHS, and then they'll be jumping into the fire out of the frying pan.
Dr. Gill,
is an absolute disaster.
Thank you for your contribution and for being so frank about things. That's Dr. Bob Gill, GP and producer of the great NHS Heist. A last word to you, Dr. Lawrence Bruckman, just on the walk-in centres being closed. I mean, people's daily interactions with the NHS, or weekly, monthly, whatever it is. This was a fantastic service, and how depressing that walk-in centres are being closed.
I think it's sad that a facility that was started largely, I have to say, on political grounds by the government of the day, I can't even remember which government now, they started it, and they started it rather than putting the money into community, into A&E, and into general practice. They didn't do that. They chose to set up walk-in centres. So this was a new additional service. And of course, all the people that have used it largely think it's wonderful. And to take away that service looks awful. But actually, if they were to put the money, and more importantly, the staff, because this has taken staff away from other parts of the health service, if they were to put those staff back into various bits of the health service, and I would start actually with community services like district nurses and physiotherapists, if I was picking, if you were to do that, that would make a difference. The biggest problem, very sadly, related to things like people who die because they're not cared for in the community is to find sufficient carers. And those carers were sucked up by walk-in centres. So although I'm sad to see the diminution of a service, if those staff were to be redeployed in the right places, that would make a significant difference to people stuck in hospital who can't get out. Okay. And that alone would make life in A&E a lot easier, if it were to happen.
Dr. Lawrence Buckman, thank you very much indeed. Thanks to Dr. Bob Gill as well. We're off and running with the NHS once again. A reallocation of resources to district nurses and physios. If that would be the case, these walk-in centres are closing. That is just another element. Every single week you can pick an NHS story. It's not a political football, and we're not just slamming the NHS for goodness sake, but if it's running badly, if we're not giving it enough money, I mean, you tell me what the solution is. 0345 6060 973. Are we really being set up for a critical mass to be achieved, after which people will accept that an insurance-based system is better? That was the contention, if I've summed him up correctly, of Dr. Gill. Amazing. 17 minutes past 9 is the time here on LBC.